the past 30 years in the United States, according to the American Academy of Dermatology. The AAD estimates some 212,000 new cases of melanoma will be diagnosed in 2025 alone. Vanshanathan also says the sun is strongest between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., so it's best to limit your exposure during those hours, according to her. You can check to make sure the UV index is below 3 or 4 before heading outside, she says.
It's hard to find such a clear-cut paradigm, if you will, for other cancers where do this and this won't happen, and don't do that and, this cancer will develop. But we do see that it's very clear that avoiding the sun and wearing sunscreen can go such a long way at preventing someone from having a really, really awful experience with something like melanoma or skin cancer.
That's Dr. Veena Vanshanathan. She's a board-certified dermatologist in the San Francisco Bay Area. Okay, Dr. Weller, go ahead.
Okay, would love to. So basal cell skin cancer is commoner than every other cancer put together. When you have a basal cell skin cancer diagnosed, your life expectancy goes up. I don't see that as a problem. Melanoma rates have increased sixfold in the United States in the last 4 years. That's diagnoses. Deaths have not changed. Ade Adamson, fantastic dermatologist in Austin, Texas. Look up his stuff published in JAMA in the New England Journal. So in America, your biggest risk factor, so looking at diagnoses of melanoma and how sunny it is where people live, great paper in JAMA Dermatology, pretty much no relationship. The biggest correlation between a diagnosis of melanoma is how rich you are. So the richer counties are, the more likely people are to be diagnosed with melanoma. The more biopsies are done, the more likely
it's because
people
they have
are to
better
be
health care. I'm just going to jump in here and say my supposition is that in the United States,
that's the argument. There's no so look, if all of that health care was really effective, you would expect a fall in deaths from melanoma. There has been no change up or down, no significant change up or down in deaths from melanoma in the last 40 years, despite the huge rise in incidence. It's a classic
Dr. Weller,
case
let me
of
jump in.
overdiagnosis.
Can I just
come in with the
here?
counter-argument.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily a counter argument, but just make this a little more complex. Death is not the only negative outcome from having from melanoma, right? I mean, So just the change in the death rate is not a good enough reason to say, well, the increased diagnoses have not been effective.
Look, I think not being dead is the most important endpoint. I'm kind of agnostic about what I don't die of. Whether I don't die of being struck by lightning, don't die of skin cancer, don't die of heart disease, I really don't care. I just don't want to be dead. And I am interested in factors, exposures that reduce my risk of death. And certainly here in Northern Europe, the more sunlight I get, very markedly, the lower my risks of dying. So we are about to publish a paper. We had one last year, another one out here. And in the UK Biobank, this huge, great forward-looking study of 500,000 people in Britain, which has got very good data on how much sunlight exposure people got, and also education, income, smoking, exercise, etc., etc. We find that if you reduce sun exposure for a British cohort, enough to reduce one death from skin cancer, that associates with 50 extra deaths from other causes. Now look, that may not apply directly in America because you're a lot further south than us, but the risk-benefit ratio is enormously in favour of sunlight exposure in Northern Europe. And I suspect to a lesser degree that will apply in America. And all dermatologists think about is the skin, and that's not good medicine.
Professor Hart, let me turn back to you because we've only got about 3-ish minutes here remaining in the conversation. And what I'm thinking about more often, melanoma is an important issue. I'm not going to diminish that. But we're not talking about having to go outside for 12 straight hours a day and have the sun beat down on your skin. It sounds like from this conversation that even small increases or moderate increases in sun exposure can provide some significant health benefits. And so, since you're at the Kids Research Institute in Perth, it suddenly occurred to me, I don't know if this is happening in Australia, but in the United States, there's been a growing issue over many years that kids during the school year especially barely go outside at all because the amount of recess that they're having has been reduced. Are we seeing impacts on children's health from reduced sun exposure?
You are so correct in that. Yes, the clearest studies are with myopia and eyes for children. But yes, with type 1 diabetes, that's a children's disease. In fact, we know a lot of autoimmune diseases start in childhood, may even start in utero. And yes, sun exposure is so important there. And I think Richard brought it up. It's the risk to benefit ratio. And I think dermatologists, the American dermatologists, all they think about is risk. We've really got to move that pendulum a bit more to considering the benefit. So a little bit more sun exposure. We say never get sunburnt, because sunburnt is the initiating event for melanoma. We just say never get sunburned, but certainly get sun exposure, because that is going to be homeostatic and so good for you for health.
This is really key. Get more sun exposure, don't get burned. Okay. I have a question for you though. I mean, like, depending on, maybe this is highly variable depending on each individual, but how can we measure what what that threshold is between a healthy amount of sunlight and I might be outside long enough to get burned?
I would say just never get sunburned. Everyone, you have to consider your own intelligence. You know when you're going to get sunburned. And I think just make sure you get out a little bit every day and get a little bit more than you might have been getting up till now. You'll feel better, your energy levels will improve, your whole body health will improve. But
Dr.
never
Weller,
get sunburnt.
It's so funny. Maybe I'm just not that sun intelligent myself, but when I'm outside for a long time, I do wear some sunscreen. But when I don't reapply it, sometimes I don't realize that I'm getting close to being burned until well after the fact. Maybe that's because I've got brown skin. Who knows? But Prue Hart, professor at the University of Western Australia, located at the Kids Research Institute in Perth, Australia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
And
you.
Dr. Richard Weller, Dr. Richard Weller, professor of medical dermatology at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. Dr. Weller, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
I'm Meghna Chakrabarty. This is On Point.
On Point is a production of WBUR Boston and is distributed by APM, American Public Media.
Support for On Point comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and Made In, makers of cookware found in restaurants around the world, offering a carbon steel non-stick griddle for home use, designed for use indoors or outdoors, on a grill or over an open flame. More at madeincookware.com. And BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy and helping clients find balance. Clients are matched with one of 30,000 therapists for online therapy from anywhere at betterhelp.com/public.
This is KUOW FM Seattle, KUOW Tumwater, KQOW Bellingham. It's almost noon on a Friday, which means KUOW's Week in Review is coming right up. I can see the team is assembled and ready to opine. Here's your host, Bill Radke.
Hi there. Listen up, Canada. I know you're going to be listening. You're a big fan of the show. We are slapping some lumberjack-sized tariffs on you, so if you sell us stuff, it'll cost you. We'll touch a little bit on the new tariffs. Not a lot. A little tariff discussion. Also, how are the president's moves in general playing into our local elections? And when do we just have to not think about national and just talk local issues. Will Seattle's robotaxis make you safer or unsafer? And Seattle nudity, still legal, but there is shrinkage. And whatever makes my guest smile this week just might make you smile too, so stick around.
70 degrees and sunny in Seattle. It's going to be a at least partly sunny afternoon with a high of 80.
Support for KUOW comes from the King County Library System with maker spaces to learn 3D printing, new library cards from local artists, and 50 locations across King County. Learn more at kcls.org. Curiosity isn't quiet.
KUOW is proud to support The Feast, presenting the Wealth Walk, a theatrical walking tour of Mount Baker and the Rainier Valley that is partially a game, partially a performance. The Wealth Walk's mission is to create an embodied metaphor for economics, history, and ecology, offered in person or self-guided through an app. More at the-feast.org.
Thousands of older adults are competing in the National Senior Games this week, facing off in shuffleboard, swimming, pickleball, and more. The biannual event has been around for decades, and now attendance is up.
There's going to be a lot more of us older seniors. I hope I can play till I'm 100, at least.
I'm Juana Summers. That story on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
That story and a whole lot more, All Things Considered, begins at 3 p.m. on 94.9 KUOW. It's 12:01. Here's an update of today's top news.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting says it's in the process of shutting down following Congress's decision to take back over $1 billion in federal funding. CPB appropriates funds to public media, including NPR. In its announcement today, CPB says most people will lose their jobs as of September 30th. A small team will stay until January to close out operations. The Trump administration has levied the highest of its new tariffs on Syria. NPR's Jana Raff reports from Jordan. The U.S. recently moved to lift trade sanctions on the financially struggling country.
The new tariff rate on Syria, 41%, is second only to the 50% rate the administration previously imposed on Brazil. The U.S. this year lifted most trade sanctions against Syria to help its troubled economy after the fall of the Bashar al-Assad regime last December. President Trump described the global tariffs as a response to an extraordinary threat to the national security and economy of the United States. But official U.S. trade figures show only about $10 million in Syrian exports to the U.S. last year, most of it in spices and preserved foods, compared with about $2 million in U.S. exports to that country. Jana Raff, NPR News, Amman.
The latest monthly jobs report shows weaker than expected gains. 73,000 jobs were created last month. The report contributed to losses on Wall Street. Major market indices have been down 1% to 2%. On weighing the economic data, the Federal Reserve decided this week to keep borrowing costs unchanged, despite White House pressure on Fed Chair Jerome Powell to lower rates. On Truth Social yesterday, President Trump challenged the Fed board, which was split over whether or not to lower rates, to, quote, take control and force the matter. Today brings big change for millions of federal student loan borrowers. For the first time in a year, interest will begin accruing on their loans if they're enrolled in the repayment plan known as SAVE. Here's NPR's Corey Turner.
SAVE is the Biden-era repayment plan that was so generous, especially with loan forgiveness, that Republicans sued and the courts have so far blocked it. For a year, the 7.7 million borrowers still enrolled in SAVE have been in a kind of legal limbo, with no interest and no payments required. But starting today, interest will once again begin accruing for these borrowers, and that means to keep loans from ballooning, the Education Department is encouraging borrowers to, quote, quickly transition to a legally compliant repayment plan. Options include an older, similar plan created by Congress known as Income-Based Repayment, or IBR. Corey Turner, NPR News.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 585 points. It's NPR News.
This is KUOW News. I'm Noelle Gasca in Seattle. Seattle authorities are asking people to stay vigilant and be on guard in the wake of another fire in the city. They've yet to say if a fire that destroyed a detached garage in the Beacon Hill neighborhood yesterday morning is arson, but they are calling it suspicious. Meanwhile, a $10,000 reward is still being offered for information that leads to an arrest in a couple of arsons that were set this week in the Columbia City and Mount Baker neighborhoods. Anyone with information about those fires can call 1-800-55-ARSON. An education nonprofit says it's facing insolvency because the State Department of Commerce has yet to reimburse it millions of dollars. Here's KUOW's Ann Dornfeld.
The Equity in Education Center helped lead the state's digital inclusion program for 2 years, distributing grants to 36 organizations. Director Sharon Navas says after the Department of Commerce was audited last fall, it started withholding payments and asked for more documentation.
And we came to some really good understandings. We affirmed that we would give them everything that they needed.
Navas says Commerce has kept changing the requirements and now owes her organization and others $3.6 million. A Department of Commerce spokesperson said the state can't comment on what's become a formal contract dispute. But in June, Publicola reported that Commerce Director Joe Wynn said his agency has only withheld payments that lack proper receipts. Ann Dornfeld, KUOW News.
And Boeing is bracing for a possible strike this weekend at its Defense Division factories around St. Louis. More than 3,200 machinists there have threatened to walk off the job as early as Sunday. The machinists union has been in a contract dispute with the company. They rejected an offer last week, which triggered a 7-day cooling-off period before the possible strike. Bloomberg News reports that Boeing made a new offer this week. They say it contains similar terms. This is KUOW News.
Support for NPR comes from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com. This is NPR.
Welcome to Friday. Welcome to KUOW's Week in Review. My name is Bill Radke, and I convene a panel every week. Thoughtful, up on the news people. Maybe you were busy. Maybe you were distracted by the fighter jets or whatever happened this week. But we're following. We're paying attention for you. And on Week in Review, we summarize and analyze what happened this week. And my panel this week includes Jolie Lansdowne, the chair of the King County Republican Party. Jolie, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a great honor to be here.
It's my honor. A first-timer, Jolie, and a non-first-timer to her left, Cathy Allen, Democratic political consultant. Welcome back.
Glad to be here.
Owner of the Connections Group. You recruit and train women, young people, and even a few good men to run for office.
That's the case.
That's the tagline.
You know, there's more and more good men out there than I ever imagined.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Do you know any? Right. What about this one?
I wouldn't in a minute.
Okay. Brian Callanan, good man, Brian Callanan, Seattle Channel host of the podcast Seattle News, Views, and Brews. Welcome back, sir.
Great to be here.
Thank you for coming. And all of us are visible to you if you just go on YouTube. We live stream the show. Jolie's already waved at you. We look like drowned rats because of the tsunami.
Not quite.
Yeah, I'm sure you heard, big earthquake off of Russia and warnings went out. The biggest waves on Washington coast were 16 inches, but the state tsunami hazard planner, Daniel Ungard, said it was a practice run.
This is a really good opportunity for Washingtonians to kind of take stock of their situation, how they're getting their information, because the next event might not be so fortunate for us.
Did the non-tsunami make you take stock, or did it just make you take tsunamis even less seriously than you did before?
No, you got it. I took it very seriously.
Good.
I woke up and I heard that it was tsunami, and then did my little research, which is, there were 94 earthquakes that hit the United States just last week. And I'm going, what?
Yikes.
What? And one of them was in Seattle, and I didn't even know it. Mm-hmm. And so in all of it, the fact is that, something seems to be happening out there. Volcanoes, they're climbing up everywhere. Taking a look at this. And then the wildfire. I wake up and here on KUOW, they actually are evacuating Mason County.
Yeah. Right.
So you're putting all that together in your mind, in your fear basket.
No worse. I'm putting it in my emergency protection. And as the case is, knowing that FEMA's going away,
Yeah.
all I could say to you is that with no emergency management on the federal level, my reaction was, where are those emergency supplies I had? Oh, they are exactly where I put them 5 years ago.
Right.
And those canned goods are no longer good anymore.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got to get prepped and stay prepped for sure.
Yeah. Jolie, how you doing? Are you feeling fearful this week?
Oh, no, we're hanging in there. You know, that was an interesting 24 hours. I got a call from my mom who lives in Hawaii, and the tsunami concerns there were a little more extreme, I think,
Yes.
than here. But no, it's a good week. And, you know, we're checking our go bags and we're good to go.
I heard there were traffic jams in Honolulu because, you know, we didn't used to have tsunami warnings, but now, so Honolulu got hours and hours of warning, which is fine. You know, you have an advisory, right? You don't know. But then, so what people did was get in their cars to stock up on supplies. So there were giant traffic jams, people stuck in their cars hours before nothing happened.
Yeah. I had some friends in Kauai that we called, and it sounded like a similar type of situation. It was like, all right, everybody get upland, and they were okay.
Right.
But it was that kind of moment of, gosh, I guess they were out of their hotel, et cetera, for a good 8-10 hours. So yeah, there was that period of time when people just didn't know. But again, it just gets back to the point of needing to be prepared and making sure you're ready. But yeah, the traffic jam going for that, you know, extra
Costco run.
Yeah, I was going to say the extra power pack of toilet paper. Come on, let's pull this together, people.
All right. Let's. Should we talk about other news of the week?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Well, this is sort of a national, international, and local issue. The tariff clock we know has been ticking, and yesterday President Trump sort of pulled the trigger with sweeping new tariffs on imports from around the world. Minimum 10%, more if your country has a trade deficit with us. China and Mexico are still working on their deals, and one of the biggest hits goes to our historic enemy, Canada. 35% tariffs on Canadian imports. President Trump says that's because Canada sends us so many criminals and illegal drugs. Brian, you asked some business leaders how they feel about tariffs.
Yeah, I talked with the Port of Seattle about this a few months ago, and I think one of the big issues that they're focused on is the fact that 2 out of 5 jobs in our state are reliant on some sort of trade, and that's a big number. So I'm not just talking about jobs that are down at the docks. I'm talking about the entire state. So there's a lot of concern from that perspective. And then
food growers,
exactly,
all the timber, everything.
There's a lot of different impacts
Boeing.
there. So when you look at that, and when you look at where some of these different impacts could be felt, I see those rising prices, and I just can't get around. And I'm not an economist by any stretch, but I just can't get my head around the idea that, okay, if this importer or exporter or whoever is paying those tariffs, I just can't figure out how that would not be paid by the consumer at some point. So I think that's the big concern here. We've seen inflation be very reluctant to drop, I guess, countrywide and certainly here in Washington state. So I think that's what everyone's looking at right now. I think there was at least a little bit of unease in the market today. It took another big dive, about 500, 600 points. So I think there's some concern out there. Again, we keep on waiting for this other shoe to drop, but maybe we're already seeing that in terms of the reluctance of people to spend money, in terms of what could happen to these different international partners that we're talking about here. So I think there's some concern, and I think it's a very valid concern right now.
But in fairness, stocks have not dropped the way a lot of warnings have been telling us is going to happen. They've dropped and then bounced back up,
right,
even with the threat of tariffs. And inflation has not taken off yet. This is all yet. We'll see, but it hasn't been. Trump got some deals and some commitments supposedly.
Yeah.
So we don't know yet.
I hear you. It's just one of these things where I think businesses crave consistency, and that's what we don't have right now.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen it in the past where it's been an on again, off again situation when it comes to these tariffs, and it's that unknown that I think a lot of businesses are concerned about.
Well, I think it's more than just even businesses. I know with the friends that I have had for 8 years in a row come down from Canada every single summer to
They're not
mooch
coming
off of
down.
me.
To mooch off of you.
They come down all the time, and it's like I was sitting there just saying, wait a minute, guys, don't tell me this is about America. This is about your friend Cathy, right? What's the deal? And actually what they're saying, we're just not going to spend any money down there. And I'm saying you never do anyways. It's not going to be any problem.
Uh-huh.
And so from that,
because you pay for everything. 'Cause
that's
they're
right.
rich enough.
That's right. But it's true. I mean, that bothers me more than anything. The fact that Canada now has a reason not to like us. We had few enough friends that when it comes right down to it, seeing that this is happening, I really don't know. I read all on these tariffs, and I can't figure out, are we better or less well off? Foreign governments are not paying a whole lot more money. We're paying that charge. And so I look at it as just another one where you think you're doing yourself something good and just screwing yourself once again.
Julie, Republicans used to be anti-tariff. Where you're head of the King County Republican Party. We talked about being a trade-dependent state. That's tough. How do you handle what's your take on these tariffs?
Well, the tariffs, I think, are good things for folks to look into. The truth is that our country was at its strongest and healthiest about 100 years ago when we were employing tariffs. And while we're not looking for any reasons to make it more expensive to live in our already very expensive city, I think, sure, there's going to be a few little bumps on the front side of it. But if we look at it from a cost-benefit analysis, kind of simply, as a business structure, the long term looks pretty good for America. And I think ultimately will strengthen us. So, I'm a fan. I actually wrote an article in the Seattle Times about it with Victoria Palmer, one of our representatives at KCGOP, and looking at that it actually enhances the strength of small businesses.
What are these economists missing when they say, Washington State's going to take a hit? I mean, the line we used to be, it's protectionism, it's going to raise prices, it lends itself to monopolies because you're giving that protection to companies that don't have to compete in the free market.
Well, I don't think it contradicts free market, actually. And I think strengthening local companies and keeping our buyers right here in America and our production here in America, I think those are all good things. So I say let's see it play out.
When it does play out, I guess my concern is, because I think the end goal is, at least when I've heard President Trump talk about it, it's okay, you're a foreign company, you want to sell your goods here? Great. Build your factories here, things of this nature. Make sure it's happening here. Then we won't hit you with these tariffs. But if you produce those overseas or whatever else and bring them in, we are going to charge you. So I guess the idea is, do we need to be building those shirts to make, the factories to make the T-shirts here, the factories where people are, you've heard the old line, screw in the back of the iPhone or whatever else. Is that the kind of business that we want to be growing here in the United States, that kind of lower skill type of factory job? Is that what we want to try to bring back? That's where I see that bigger issue going, the future issue going. If people are going to be, businesses are going to be following along with that, is that where we want to guide our overall business? And I have concerns about that.
Well, I wonder if guiding our overall business and then building those factories, those are kind of two different things. And I think if we have a diverse, demographic of businesses, there's younger people, we're all in different seasons and different lives and different skill sets, so I think bringing production here and creating that opportunity for, all of society and all the diverse, laborers that we have in America, I think it's good long term. It's diversity and it's good.
Well, we'll see. And long term is a weird thing in the United States because we tend to fishtail from one election to another.
Yeah.
So,
True.
and in fact, we don't know whether these tariffs will stick because the Constitution gives Congress the power to impose tariffs. And yesterday, in fact, a federal appeals court heard arguments over Trump's emergency powers. President Trump says he can do this because he declared a trade deficit emergency and a fentanyl emergency. And the appeals court justices this week sounded highly skeptical, but it will go to the Supreme Court. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that discussion because where was the emergency? I think that's going to be key to that. And yeah, we've seen it happen locally here too, declare the emergency to make sure that all the dollars and resources go there. I'm very interested to see where that court decision goes because I hear what you're saying, Jolie. I think there are a lot of different economists out there, Department of Commerce certainly here in the state of Washington too, that really don't see the logic of this. So we're going to see it play out. We'll see it happen in court, and I'm looking forward to those arguments, I guess.
Julie, all I can tell you is that I seldom say, I hope you're right. Seldom say that to a fellow political person on the other side. However, I would like to think it is, but I think production, as we know it, is also changing. I think that we're seeing like the unemployment rate go up for the first time in a long time.
That's right.
And we're seeing so much else that's happening right now, making it more chaotic. I say, everyone just hold your breath until we get rid of Trump, and things will be better. Once again, we'll go back to the land of plenty.
You can hold your breath for 3.5 years? Okay.
Well, what do you think? What about President Trump's emergencies? He's declared many emergencies since he came into office. There was the fentanyl and border crossings and the International Criminal Court and water regulations and protests against his immigration policies. I know when these are two different cases, but I wanted to know when Governor Inslee took emergency powers during the pandemic, there were very a worthy debate about whether we want our executive taking emergency power. What sense are you making of these different, in this case, we're talking about tariffs. Does the president have a right to take power from Congress for what he calls an emergency?
Wow, there is just so much in that question. There's so many ways I could go. I'm excited about that. The most recent executive order that he signed just a few days ago about restoring safety to our streets and looking at mental health and addiction is right on point with what we're really challenged with here in Seattle, right? It propels our homeless situation. It's really, something that needs to be addressed. And
this has to do with how housing first workers, how harm reduction workers do the job, and also the question of committing people involuntarily.
That's right. And a simple way to kind of put this in easy talking points is there's a kind of treatment first protocol and there is a housing first protocol. And those two camps, don't always agree in the middle very well about how to go about this. But, the truth is that we all are going after the same goal. We all want, people not struggling in mental illness and addiction in our city, And so looking statistically at some of the results, I'm encouraged by this executive order that it looks just bringing a lot of useful strategies that are proven to restore safety and health in our streets. And Rachel Savage, who's running for city council, just filed an initiative to ban camping, in our city. There's a lot of things lining up, and we're seeing that this is an issue that 77% of the people in King County agree on. This level of, homelessness and drug addiction, mental health, being out on the streets and uncared for well. So this is an issue that I think is coming to kind of a crescendo that people are in agreement on. Sometimes we don't always like the things that force us into agreement, but we're kind of all at this same table of saying, hey, we need to look at this. And the executive order that he signed really supports some good solutions to that. So.
Okay, we've moved away from executives declaring emergencies, but do either of you want to comment on that?
I just want to comment on the fact that, I look back at 7 years worth of dealing with homelessness, dealing with local government, huge amounts of money, millions and billions. I look at everything and see everything is worse, not better. And I have 22 different brochures from people running for office right now. Every one of them talks about homelessness. Everyone talks about affordability. Everyone talks about drug addiction. And we've gone nowhere. What best I can see as a good Democratic woman who has never found something that she couldn't spend more money on, the fact is I look at this and think, no, you guys, this has been fruitless. Yes, Bruce Harrell has built a brand new building with, 1,000 different places you could live. And there's still more people on the streets than I have ever seen.
I guess I just want to make sure that I insert into the conversation that Housing First, I know it's gotten a lot of different criticism, but it has shown a lot of different results. So are they perfect? Are they doing the entire job? Absolutely not. But I just want to make sure that concept of Housing First isn't thrown out the window because it has shown results over the past several years. I think we heard that from...
For those, just to catch up people who don't know what Housing First means, we're not going to go all the way down this road because we're week in review. We got a lot of things to talk about. But it's the idea that you you can't help someone. It's a lot easier to help someone who's in the throes of addiction, for example, when they, with their behavioral issues, when they can have some stability and some peace and quiet and some solitude and a place to get things together. So get them into housing. That's going to reduce the chaos in their lives. It's going to up the chance of helping them.
That's the theory, and it has played out. And has it been perfect? Absolutely not. But I think it's shown some results, and I just want to make sure that approach is not thrown out, because I think it's had some valid results.
Yeah, and that's
I don't think it'll
such
be
an
thrown out. I think that in all of it, I would be hard pressed to vote against anything that dealt with addiction, affordability, as well as housing. I would be very, very much likely to have voted for every single one that have been actually put before us in the last 7 years.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I think it's important that, yes, everything you said is so important to keep in mind. We just need to marry it with accountability and results that are actually, at the end of the programs, the people are healed and restored and well. And so I think that's really the conversation that we're talking about.
That's a good point, and I want to shout out to another podcast, actually, the Seattle Nice podcast. Yeah. I know you heard this too, Brian, because you talked about it on your podcast, Seattle News, Views, and Brews.
Yeah, just this idea that...
Yeah, there was a sort of a what would you call Lisa Dugard besides a MacArthur genius? A reformer of housing and...
Purpose, Dignity, Action is the name of her group, and she really has been working with Housing First issues for many, many years. She seemed to think, at least as I heard it from her, that it was a situation where this executive order is not the erasure of Housing First. She really saw the devil's going to be in the details, I think, when when the work is done. She seemed to think that there was some room for these different policies to stick together, and accountability is certainly important.
Exactly, because so she wasn't disagreeing with you, Joe, in the sense that she's saying, the problem is the idea, the Housing First, harm reduction, these were sold not as just useless, feel-good, woke, do-nothing programs. They're meant to help people on with their lives, and that's hard and expensive work. But the capacity and the services and the people and the beds and on and on were never paid for.
Yep.
And so the accountability, she agrees that the accountability is lacking. Anyway, we've gotten off on all kinds of subjects. Before we take a break on Week in Review, I just wanted to, since we're talking about the president and sort of local reactions to the national situation, we've got ballots sitting on our tables and our desks, or maybe in my case, I've sent it in. How do you feel like national issues are affecting this week's primary election? And do we know anything from the polls about how Seattle, King County, Washingtonians are leaning here? We have a chance to make a change if we want to.
Oh, what?
That's what we call boring.
It is?
Oh, you think so?
No, I think it's exciting and thrilling.
Wait a minute. You're a campaign consultant.
I know, and actually look at the number today, and we're up to a whole 11% of the people have returned their ballot. Thank you very much,
The election
Bill
is
Radke.
boring.
Yes, the election is so boring. It's in the summer. It's actually hot.
I see.
Mariners are winning.
There's
What else
tsunamis.
can we deal with? The thing of it is that, yes, we are that far away, and it's going to be a close election. Both the mayor's race, as well, City of Seattle mayor's race, as well as the King County exec, those are going to be very close, because we're going to have less than 27% of the voters actually returning their ballots. Bill and I included. Have you turned to yours in, you guys? All right.
Good to go.
Well, I think it's an exciting time, though. We've got a nonpartisan primary, and one of the reasons that people don't vote when we see these low voter turnouts is because they often just don't know who to vote for. It takes a little more research.
We have a blanket primary that it ends up in the top two going to the general election, not necessarily an R versus a D.
Right. And so when you're looking through your ballots, it's a lot of work to kind of go through and figure out who to vote for. So what we did at KCGOP is we put together a voter's guide for I think the first time in the primary part of the election cycle, and that's available on our website at kcgop.org. But that's one
the
of
King
them.
County GOP Republican Party, for
That's-
those just tuning in.
Yes, thank you. And so that's a great, if you haven't voted yet and you're looking for a little guidance, hop on there. And we sent a survey out to the, 200 something candidates and invited them to tell us how they thought on issues. And those answers are right there as well. So, trying to support resources and tools so that engaging in local government is easier. That's kind of my role, making it a little more fun to vote. So if you haven't voted yet, get out there to vote.
I would just say briefly, I hear what you're saying about the low voter turnout. That's no good. But I really do see at a local level, at an international level, these different issues that are big national fights between Democrats and Republicans, they definitely have an impact on the local race here. I mean, we have seen over the past week here, Mayor Bruce Harrell aligning with the city attorney, Ann Davison, both up for office, right? So like, hey, we're suing the Trump administration, all this type of stuff. I can see so many of them jumping on that, I won't say bandwagon, but certainly jumping at the opportunity to say, hey, we don't like Trump, here's how we're going to help. And I think they're really using that. They're using that sentiment, which is strong within the city of Seattle and King County, too, when it comes to pushing back against President Trump. I think they're using that to at least elevate their platforms. And I think that's something important to look at because all politics is local and all politics is national. It's certainly combining this time around.
The interesting thing to me is that, this is the time when we usually put in primary years like this, which are off-cycle, big presidential years. What happens is that you find that there's usually school bonds on there.
Right.
Lots of well, now we got... our library friends, oh my gosh. Yeah. And these are these poor folks that are like hardly with a large budget, and they're all over our Washington state ballots. And I worry about them. The same thing with the democracy voucher here in Seattle, that low turnout is going to change the average age of who's voting by 10 years. Instead of it being 47, it's going to be 57.
You know what else that low turnout does is it makes your vote worth 3 times as much, if only about 30% of people
like
are
a
voting.
true Republican. Oh, yeah.
But I'll tell you the truth is I was a 20-year voting Democrat. I'm a recent...
What happened?
Well, I did some research and,
It was your fault. What'd you do? Yeah.
Jeez.
Look in the mirror.
Clear. I do all the time. And that's why I'm one of the very few that vote for Republicans. Have run Lisa Murkowski's campaign in Alaska, for example.
Wow.
I have gone ahead and crossed over because I believe in diversity, but diversity of opinion.
There you go.
And even if you're wrong, Jolie, the fact is that
looking right at her. Yeah.
I give you the right to be wrong.
How kind.
And you, my friend.
Anything before we take a break? Anything more? What's the most scintillating thing you didn't get a chance to say about our political picture right now, locally or statewide? We covered it.
Just apathy. Apathy. It's always been bad in summers. That's one thing. But the fact is that with these local races, they are so important. The important part I looked at is the lack of Republicans that were really running, the kind that are going to be competitive. And the same thing is true in terms of even the money. The money hasn't changed. We still have the most sickening new record high mayors and King County exec costs.
Oh, it's spending?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I look at that and I say, I can understand why the public is sitting there turning on the game and not watching the sports.
Yeah, Ann Davison is a Republican, and she declared that in 2020.
Seattle City Attorney.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And when she ran for lieutenant governor, she declared that. So I think it's interesting to watch her really separate herself from at least the Trumpian version of the Republican Party with what she's doing with these different lawsuits.
That's mandatory. That's mandatory.
It's a big part. And when we see that race really start to play out, and it was interesting, there was a poll this week from the earlier this week from the Northwest Progressive Institute (NPI) that showed she had a lead certainly in her closest competitor Erica Evans, but 40% of the people didn't even know, they were unsure who they're going to vote for. So I think the primaries are important because we're going to see, we have some close races. That race for mayor, a lot closer than a lot of people I think would have expected there. So we're going to see where some of these numbers fall out. And then we're really going to see the dollars come in because the PAC that is supporting Bruce Harrell, those are a lot of dollars there. So I'm really interested to see where that goes after next
before
week.
The unions weigh in.
Yeah.
The unions haven't put the money in that they usually put in.
Not yet.
Okay, we're going to take a break. How do you feel about voting in the nude? You think I mean, it would be less boring, right? I don't know.
Here's hoping.
Is Seattle protecting us from the nudity, or is this a naked attack on our civil liberties? When we return on Week in Review.
Support for KUOW comes from King County Parks, presenting Chomp, Saturday, August 16th at Marymore Park. Open to the public and featuring music from Kim Deal and Suzalo, as well as activities for all ages, highlighting farms and restaurants using locally sourced food. More information at chomplocal.org.
KUOW is here every day, rain or shine, elections or emergencies, because listeners like you believe in public radio. August is Make-A-Will Month. It's your chance to leave a legacy at KUOW. No matter the size, a gift in your will can help keep KUOW strong for future generations. Go to KUOW.org/future to get started.
Support for KUOW comes from Third Place Books. Mona Awad discusses her new book, We Love You, Bunny, a sequel and prequel to the author's novel Bunny. Monday, September 29th at 7 p.m. Ticket information available at thirdplacebooks.com.
You are listening to KUOW's Week in Review. My name is Bill Radke, and my panel includes Seattle Channel and Seattle News, Views, and Brews host Brian Callanan, Democratic political consultant Cathy Allen, and King County Republican Party Chair Jolie Lansdowne. You have been waved at if you're watching the show on our live stream on YouTube. Item number, wherever we are. I don't know what item we're on at this point, but we're covering the week's news. Have you all followed at some level Seattle's nude beach debate? There's a Lake Washington Park beach called Denny, Blaine, where for decades some people have been sunbathing clothes off, particularly queer people. A small minority of park users, not necessarily the sunbathers, have also done some of the sex acts. Now, some neighbors have sued the city for not stopping the sex acts. And there's other issues about, parking and noise and all, as usual. But regarding nudity, the judge found that the nudity itself, which is legal, was part of the problem. So now the city's proposing to create two spaces. Nudity would not be allowed in most of the park, only down near the shore. So that's a minority of the, that's a slice of the park, small slice of the park. And Brian, neither side of this debate seems thrilled.
Yeah, which I guess means they did it right. I don't know.
Right, could be.
That's sometimes the definition of that. I just find it very interesting that the city of Seattle has gone to lengths to protect this right that people have to sunbathe in the nude. And so they're trying to set this up. There's going to be barriers up. At least that's what their plan is saying there. I think the whole idea is, and this is where you got to take a few steps back. I think a few landowners around there were just not happy with this. And so the back story was a few of those landowners actually approached the mayor personally and said, hey, let's take care of this and change this up. And so I think all of this is starting to come out. Now the city really is trying to figure out a way for this to work, quote unquote, for everybody involved here. And they've made this solution. Will it actually work? I don't know. And it's this whole idea of enforcing the nude and not nude and whatever else. It just, it's kind of what was once a molehill has definitely turned into a mountain here, feels like.
I don't know. I think it's more a deal of much ado about nothing on.
Oh, here we go.
All I can tell you is that I look at this and say to myself, what's going to happen? In 3 other states where this has happened on the East Coast, what's happened is that, of course, there are the big boats that go by with lots of people with lots of cameras and lots of binoculars and so on. And so you'd have to put a fence around even the water.
Right.
Just so others going by weren't going to be doing this, and all for just.
Wait a minute. So the people going by won't have to see nudity, or so that
so they don't exploit the
nudity. Okay.
Yeah, that they just don't go taking pictures.
It's not private anymore.
Sex on the beach. It's sort of like one of these that becomes.
Well, I think sex on the beach is still illegal.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, I'm not so sure that it is, depending on what you call their standards. The standards are no. This is not as if it's consensual. There's not an illegality.
Really?
Uh-huh.
I'll have to look into that.
I looked into it.
Oh, really?
I did.
So public sex is legal in Seattle at a public beach?
Depending on what it is. In most cases, it has to be, well, actually, this is a family show.
Yeah.
So never mind.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a microcosm of the issue, isn't it? It's like, look the other way.
I'm going to go with Brian's answer. I can't add. Yours was great. I'll just, agree with you on that.
But Jolie, this is back to old, and I don't know how the Republican Party actually would have thought about this in back in the day. But I think of Republicans typically as protecting civil liberties, or at least saying this is civil, infringement on legal activity is a no-no. That's government overreach. We're for small government. And if nudity is legal, which it is in Seattle, and that's established.
In the state of Washington.
In the state of Washington, what do you think of abridging the right to go natural?
Wow. I think we've got a great platform that discusses 25 really important issues to the people of King County in all the areas. And I recommend folks read it. Personal freedom is key. Absolutely. Small government is valuable and shows the best, healthiest communities. And personal choice is personal choice. And I'll just kind of land the plane right there.
Well, but what do you make of those competing values?
Which one specifically?
Well, as you said, that was my question. It's a civil right. It's a government saying you can't do this legal thing, or you can do it only where we tell you to do it. So I wondered as a Republican, where you came on that. A former Democrat.
A former Democrat, now Republican. If we're talking like the large overall, like a large reaching, subject, yes, we want personal freedom. We want personal right. If we're talking about a park and, we're walking, at the more local level, we certainly want to be able to walk our children along the sidewalk to take them to lunch or whatever, in this little area. And so we have to be real and be honoring. Are we a society and a community that's honoring and supporting that we're all feeling, comfortable and not, let's get real.
Well, there are societies where it's normal for children can see grown-up adults nude, and it's no big deal.
And I don't think that's really what we're talking about. Right. We're talking about some of the other things Cathy was mentioning.
Is this the part where we hear Cathy on a nude beach? Is this where we get into this?
Yeah.
No?
I don't know. Is there anything you want to tell us?
Well,
here we go.
When my husband and I went to a nude beach in Costa Rica, boy, you're tough.
Just thought I'd ask.
The fact
you don't have to talk about anything that makes you uncomfortable, Cathy.
I do all the time. And all of that, what makes this interesting to me is that when I got there, at discreetly disrobing, I could only tell you that I looked around and said, geez, these people should have clothes on because they look terrible. They look worse with no clothes on.
So we need like a design review committee for nudity too.
I was in San Sebastian in Spain, and I disrobed and felt awesome about it.
Yeah.
I'll jump in the water while I'm at it.
Well, see, that would simplify things if everybody looked like Brian Callanan. But we don't live in that world.
The body politic needs work for sure.
Okay, I think I've made you all uncomfortable enough.
Perfect.
So I can just tell you that a King County Superior Court will hold a hearing next week on this proposal to allow but shrink the nudity, limit nudity somewhat, separate the nudity from the closety at Denny Blaine Park. Okay. Whew, we should take another break before we come back and just power through the end of the show, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, right back with more Week in Review.
KUOW-FM Seattle, KUOW Tumwater, KQOW Bellingham. It's 12:42.
Support for KUOW comes from Eco Design and Maintenance, family-owned and specializing in start-to-finish exterior design using materials and methods that help to reduce environmental impact. From landscapes to hardscaping, outdoor spaces designed to be functional and long-lasting. More at eco-seattle.com.
Looking for fun ways to fill your Seattle summer? Sign up for KUOW's Summer Activity Series. Each week, we'll send you a print-at-home activity sheet, lovingly crafted for public radio nerds of all ages. Activities include games, puzzles, coloring pages, and more. All you need to do is sign up at KUOW.org/summer. Support for KUOW comes from Crosby Wealth Advisors, a private wealth advisory practice of Ameriprise Financial Services, LLC, hosting a webinar on August 13th about ways to talk with kids about their finances as they grow in the workforce. Webinar details at crosbyevents.com.
This is KUOW's Week in Review. I'm Bill Radke. I'm here with my panel, Seattle Channel's Brian Callanan and King County Republican Chair Jolie Lansdowne, and the Democratic political consultant Cathy Allen, who just asked me whether I'm coloring my hair gray.
That's a very kind way to put that. Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, well, yes, nature is coloring my hair gray, Cathy, and apparently it's been too long since I've seen you, because I'll be a little grayer next time.
Yes, and I actually kept saying, and look, he's still got a full hair off a head. That's very good.
Yes, I do. Anybody here been in a Robotaxi?
No.
Or seen one in person?
I've never seen one in person. No.
Some cities, San Francisco, Phoenix, a few others, I think Austin, L.A., have some of these. Seattle does not allow them yet, but they're getting ready to. And the city of Seattle is trying to figure out how to tell the cars when there's a non-normal situation, if there's an emergency like a big crash or a fire, because in cities that have this, a 911 dispatcher will email the robotaxi companies. That's all they can do. It's not clear what the companies do with that. And in San Francisco, there's a video of a first responder in the middle of the street directing traffic, and a robotaxi stops in the intersection. Oh, there's blockage, and blocks up emergency vehicles. So, it just occurs to me, producer Zeki, if you're there, you're on there. We have that listener voicemail. And now, are you able to drop that in the show so we can play his question? If you can find, thank you. That's my fault. I forgot to. We had a good question from a listener about this, but I wanted to ask you first. Would you? How would you feel about Seattle having self-driving cars putting around? Would you get in one? Would you fear one? Would you think, oh, thank God, there's not a human idiot behind that thing. This is going to drive better.
I have a tough time with these, and I think this is sort of the emergence of a new, let's break everything type of technology that's coming to the world of transit. And so I can understand the theory behind it. And there's a lot of people who talk about driverless cars, driverless taxis, just kind of making a constant circle around a large metropolitan area so people don't have to drive and they can actually use these cars, taxis to get through. I just think this is another example of there's a human side to this, and when you see that video from San Francisco, it's just really difficult to watch something like that and know, shoot, I guess there's nothing we can do. We better drive around here, and that's when lives are on the line. That's where I get really concerned. And are they safer than an actual human driving? I guess you could try to have that argument. I'm sure these automated car companies are, but that's a real challenge for me right now, and I think the city of Seattle is really going to have to grapple with this.
I worry more about tsunamis than I do about robo-taxis.
Okay.
I just think that it's just not in the cards, at least in my lifetime. I'm looking at this and said, look, hey, I love these little guys in the sky now that go and deliver your
drones.
Stuff. Yeah, my drones. But the fact is, I look at this and I say, no, driverless cars,
It's happening in some
all
other
over the
cities,
place, all over the world.
And Seattle, as I say, is prepping for it. In fact, this listener had a question about that.
Hi, Bill. It's Jeff Austin from Snohomish. I recently heard that the city of Seattle is studying how to get robo-taxis information when roads are closed due to emergencies. It made me wonder if the robo-taxi companies are paying the city for this study. I get that our city needs to understand the issues so that fire and police are able to keep us safe. But if the robotaxi companies are not paying a majority of these costs to address the problem that they have created, then someone needs to be outraged.
Anybody outraged? Why is the taxpayer paying to keep us safe from robotaxis?
All I know is that it's another one of these things that I put in the list with tariffs. Like, I'm just not interested there.
That's good radio right there.
Yeah. Let it rip. I hear what Jeff's saying. It's just one of those situations where if you let those dollars maybe come in from these different companies that run the autonomous cars, I mean, how are we trusting that data? Are we able to actually analyze it? And I think that's probably the bigger question here. So when you have these groups that come together to talk about autonomous cars, et cetera, of course you're going to have people representing from the industry, but I think you have to have some of these different voices in as well that involve safety, et cetera, from a city level. So I totally understand where Jeff is coming from, and I think that when the rubber actually meets the road here, the autonomous rubber meets the road here, it'll be a situation where I am hoping there are a lot of concessions from these different companies, because Seattle's a big market. Can these companies make some money here? Yes, they could.
Yeah, and I think we certainly have some opportunity for better transportation ideas and some more creativity there. I'm kind of more excited about, have you seen some of the little drone taxis getting up above the traffic? And like, I'm signing up for that. Let's just skip all of the,
delivering
road traffic.
packages, or they're going to be humans?
They're delivering Jolie, it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds like it, right? No, I've seen like the little robo cars. There's like a small drone taxi model that I think it's just prototype, but I'm more excited for that than sitting in traffic without a human driver, but that's just me.
Get me my Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
I read that Waymo programs its robotaxis to obey the speed limit, but Tesla lets theirs exceed the speed limit as humans do. Which is better? Which do we want? Because if you're, when I'm on Mercer Island, and there's a main road up Mercer Island that in some places you're the only lane, and if I'm going the speed, I only go if the speed limit's 35, I'll go to 39.
This is a citizen's arrest.
They hate me because I'm going over not enough over the speed limit. So do we want our automated cars, you can set it and forget it? Because the whole point of letting a human speed is that we're not robots. We're not going to get it exactly right. But
there's got to be like a pullover function, when it notices that there's 3 cars behind it or something. I'd push for that, but I don't know about letting them speed like that. That feels a little dangerous.
Yeah.
Do you think Seattle protesters, the sort of the modern Luddites, are going to attack robocars to protest mechanization? I have seen a little of that.
I think they will, because we protest everything here. So it's not really like unusual to be protesting something. What I check for is who's paying the bills, and taking a hold of exactly who is going to be helping choose the rules and regulations for all things that don't require drivers. I think that's what makes this interesting. And I'd rather spend the time teaching people how to drive right than finding and putting policies together that allow for driverless cars.
You're not going to be happy, Cathy. My understanding is that they're coming.
I think they are too. And just to jump in on this and what happens in Seattle, I think you will see some people pushing back, at least from the pedestrian safety side of this, because
the bike guys are already against
pedestrian and bikes, and I think it's something that the city of Seattle's really taking a close look at. Vision Zero, they've been talking about this for many years, the idea to reduce these pedestrian or bike deaths to zero. We've actually reduced that as a city, as it turns out. It's down to 10 deaths last year compared to more than double that 3 years before then. So I like that trend is going that way, and I would hate to think that this type of different technology might have an impact on that. Will it? I think that's going to be part of the kind of protest language, I would imagine, when this comes through.
No doubt about it. For the first 10 years, these things are on our street. People will be running for office against them and win by a landslide.
Oh.
Interesting. What do you think, Bill?
Well, I think that there will be, because I've seen video of this in other places, and I think it'll happen here too. You can stand in front of a robo car, delivery car, whatever it is, taxi, and it's programmed to stop. So I watched these videos, and these people have this feeling of power that we didn't used to have, right? You can command this car, I shall not let you pass. And you just stand there, and the car has stopped, so it's not able to speed around you. You can just move 3 paces to your left. You're like Tiananmen Square. You're just standing and stopping this car. There's no human inside to get out and beat you up. I don't know. Maybe it calls the cops, and I don't know what happens next. But I just think we're going to see a little, especially people coming down Capitol Hill after having a few. We're going to see some encounters, I think.
Well, that accountability is going to be, I would say, protested for lots, because I think people just get scared at the thought of no one behind the wheel, even if the people they know behind the wheel are crazy drivers.
Yeah,
Right.
are they safer than actually having a human there?
Yeah.
That's the big
That's
big
the
discussion.
question.
Yeah.
In fact, if they are safer, and I wouldn't be surprised, then maybe they should be allowed to go faster because they can actually stop on a dime, unlike me.
Radke, why don't you just quit while you're
Oh,
ahead?
well, okay, let's move on. Tell me about before I ask you what made you smile this week, Brian.
Yeah.
Perhaps maybe this made you frown. The Pacific Science Center.
Yes.
Dinosaurs are going. The poor things have already gone extinct once.
Yeah, right. Do we have to do it twice? We're talking about these awesome, late 80s, early 90s era animatronic monsters that were there, and they were such an important part of my kids growing up.
Yes.
Because initially we'd bring them through, and they just freaked out.
Yes.
I'm talking
Mine
about
too.
2-year-old, 3-year-old is like, and then it was kind of a rite of passage. It's like, hey, are you ready for the dinosaurs? And we'd bring them through. It's like, Dad, I wasn't scared of the dinosaurs today. Yes, you weren't. What a big deal. Let's go hang out by the theremin. I mean, it was just a really, really great time. And I don't know. It's a throwback for sure. And I know that they're going away, but it's difficult for me to
Why are
watch
they
them.
going away? Will you tell people?
They're breaking down. And it's to the point where they can't be reasonably fixed up. It's literally a situation where they've been held together with duct tape over the past several years, and so it's beyond the situation where they can actually repair them. So a sad day for the double extinction here.
I think that, just when they bring the new Jurassic Park Revenge out for this fall, our own park for dinosaurs goes away. I just think it's sad. And if we can have
put a man on the
driverless
moon.
cars, for gosh sakes, we can fix a stupid dino.
You don't call them stupid when they're right next to you.
No, you
with
don't.
the vestigial forelimbs and the big mouth. I'm
You're
just
very
saying.
defensive about the size of
they
their
don't like
walnut
that.
brains.
That's
You don't
right.
want to call them dumb.
Yeah, the end of an era. My kids too. A lot of field trips, a lot of memories around those dinosaurs. Sad day.
Apparently, I read I think it was in the Seattle Times. I read this that the Allosaurus is in sellable condition. They said so. Somebody who's going to have the Allosaurus in their home.
If we could round up a few bucks around the table here,
Yeah.
I bet we could figure this out.
Yep.
Let's. Okay, we're almost out of time for the show, and I always want to know because sometimes the news is serious. What about? Did anything make you feel like skipping or at least smiling?
Yep, as a kind of dyed-in-the-wool kind of progressive, all I can tell you is I drove by the big nasty billboard that says "No More Blue Angels."
Oh yeah, on Rainier Avenue.
Walked out of my house when I got home, and stood out there, and all over me went the Blue Angels, and I just smiled.
You loved it.
I loved it.
You were not anti-militarization of seafare. You loved it.
No, I loved it because it was part of the history of what I could remember always to tell people. Okay, come during the summer. Come on, you Canadians. Come on. The
Come
Blue
on,
Angels are in. But that made me smile. And I just kept thinking, gosh, it's one of the legacies of Seattle. That just makes me feel good about Seattle.
Anything else smile you this week?
That's good. Well, being on this show, I mean, I know that sounds silly, but how fun is this? I've just made some new friends, and we've had a great conversation, and this is the highlight of my week. So thank you for having me.
Jolie. You made me smile as well.
That's
Brian,
cool.
what about you?
I saw something that's happening on Monday, August 4th. It's the Great American Outdoors Act. The celebration of that, it actually passed on August 4th in 2020, and means free admission to our national parks, which is really, really cool. I think there's something to celebrate. Granted, there's a few of them around our area, like Mount Rainier. We have to make a reservation, etc. But I just think it's a great thing to celebrate, a great time to be outside, and great that those lands are preserved so we can do stuff like that.
If you're inviting me, the answer is yes.
Let's
Brian.
go. Let's go.
What made me smile was that when he played here, Ichiro Suzuki, the Seattle Mariners star, didn't speak English much in public. It was he's a native Japanese speaker, and it was, if anything, another part of his mystique. He's my favorite player of all time, and just you sort of had to see him to grasp how he could play. But because he was terse in English, I was not expecting this from his Hall of Fame speech. He got inducted into the Hall of Fame, And so he was talking about how, okay, baseball's not the most athletic sport. There used to be players with beer bellies. I don't know if they still have that. But Ichiro was saying he always prepared himself very diligently and stayed in shape.
Beyond the regular season, I had a serious routine in the off-season too. When I showed up at the camp each spring, my arm was already in shape, waiting for Mariners broadcaster Rick Ritz to say, "Holy smoke! A laser beam strike from Ichiro!"
That's more than I heard from him in how many years was he here? And I was also not expecting this.
People often measure me by my records. 3,000 hits, 10 gold gloves, 10 seasons of 200 hits. Not bad, huh? But the truth is, without baseball, you would say, this guy's such a dumbass.
What? This guy's such a dumbass? I did not see that coming. Did you understand that reference, Brian?
Not exactly,
Was
no.
just being humble?
I think so.
I
Yeah.
looked into it.
Yeah.
I researched it. So he made a veiled reference to the time that a teammate told him something to say in English to an interviewer. Do you know this? You're nodding. So Ichiro just said it, and it turned out to be, I can't exactly repeat it on the radio, but essentially he told this interviewer, August in Kansas City is so hot, it's like two rats making love in a wool sock.
Yes.
So I think he is saying that he's gullible, but for Ichiro to just bust out, and I wish I could play you more. He was gracious,
Funny.
and he was interesting, and he was funny, and it was already on top of being, my favorite player of all time, and so fitting. One of the things I don't like about pro sports is how we root for it like it's local, but it's really not. The players are not from here; they're just passing through, right? But Ichiro, for this Japanese player to be on a Pacific Rim, he's not a Kansas City Royal. He's the Seattle Mariner, and there was a big contingent of Japanese fans, and it was just a golden time. So that made me smile.
Superstar.
Yeah. Thank you. But Ichiro, too.
Yes,
I just want to
make sure you're clear on that.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Brian Callanan not only hosts at Seattle Channel, but he brings you the podcast Seattle News, Views, and Brews. Thank you, sir.
Great to be here. Thanks, Bill.
Democratic political consultant Cathy Allen, owner of the Connections Group, paying some tariffs, but still coming in. Sorry about the Canadians. Thank you for coming this week.
Thank you.
And the chair of the King County Republican Party, Jolie Lansdowne, thank you for coming in. It was a pleasure meeting you and talking through the news.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us, too, and producer Zeki Hamid and the whole crew here. I'm over time. We've got to go. See you next week for Week in Review.